So after this, I think for all the faculty that has been there, I think there are lots of different ideas. We got a glimpse of how Hossein showed us how they do things out there in London. Amrita, are you going to be presenting? Are you presenting? Yeah. Okay. Network. So. Yeah. So now we'll have Professor Ashok Bilal. Most of us know him well. Many have been taught by him. Of course, he's still practicing. His projects are also an inspiration to us. So Ashok Bilal is a principal Ashok Bilal Architects, Design and Technology Chair, KRVIA. He is graduated from the University of Cambridge, UK in Architecture and Fine Arts and obtained the Architectural Association Diploma in 1970. His architectural firm is committed to an architectural practice based on principles of environmental sustainability, social responsibility. The firm has a number of awards and its work has been published widely. Engaged in architectural education since 1990, he has developed curricula and teaching methods to address environmental issues. He has published many articles and presented papers on environmentally sustainable design and has been an active member of institutions and groups promoting awareness and building competencies in sustainable design of buildings. He has been invited to present his work on sustainable design for a developing world at various fora in India and internationally, including UK, Australia, Switzerland, Egypt, Indonesia. The list is very long. Sri Lanka, Nepal, Uganda, Iran, Philippines, Mexico. He was also the chair of the jury for the Holcim Awards for Sustainable Construction, Asia Pacific region. He is presently Design and Technology Chair at Kamla Raheja Vidyanath Institute for Architecture, Mumbai. His current interest is in developing strategies for sustainable urban development in the context of rapid urbanization. Before we give him the platform, we will reintroduce Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev because she's going to be in conversation with him. So Professor and Dean, SSAA, Ansal University. She is presently Director of Architecture, Planning and Design Schools. Together, Dr. Vibhuti is a qualified architect and has done her BArch 1989 from SPA. She completed her PhD in Vastu Vidya in 1996 from the University of London, has worked as a conservation consultant, writer, and designer. She's interested in issues of negotiating modernity, urbanism, and the craft and cultural traditions. She has taught at the University of Sussex, written 4 books and several articles on the subject of Jaipur, traditional knowledge systems, Indian cities, and Indian modernities. She has worked and written extensively on the city of Jaipur. She has been a consultant in the restoration of Jal Mahal. She has designed, curated the artwork of its pavilions and co-curated the exhibition Painted Pleasures. Her latest book on the festivals at the Jaipur court. Currently, she is devising an integrated approach to learning and developing a research ecosystem for the creative fields of architecture, planning, and design. So, actually Vibhuti, she's our dean, and and I will not say that again, but she's the one who motivates all of us to really pushes us.
I mean, I think you should say it again. She's the push.
She's the force. No. I said she's the force. As in Star Trek.
I'm really flattered. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So and
thank you.
Yeah. So Professor Ashok Lal, we'll request you to switch on your video and your audio. We are waiting for you.
So I
And,
think the format, good morning, Professor Lal.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. So I think the format would be that you will present first, and then we talk about various issues that stem from maybe your presentation, and then we will also open the floor for the audience as well. I'd like to hear them read their or speak their question, to hear their voice as well, rather than me reading their questions. So they don't need to be twice removed from the process. So welcome, and over to you.
So, Aruna, will you bring up the screen for me?
Sure, sir.
Yeah, as we start, what I've done, I've prepared my material into 3 sessions. And the idea is that after each session, we have a little discussion, question, answer. And then you move on to the next session and so on. So there are 3 sessions. I'm not able to see the screen myself. Will I be able to see it? Aruna?
Aruna is still not there.
Yeah, sir. I'm just presenting. I'm going to present the pedagogy first. Yeah.
No.
The theory first. Theory.
No.
Sorry.
It's the one, the SSAA, what is it? Construction, design, construction, and materials and construction. That's the first one. That's the first one. Pedagogy.
Sorry. Sorry, sir.
Yeah. So, coming up, magic is about to happen.
There you go.
Ah, that's great. Yeah. So we can have a full screen if you like, and then go on to the next slide number 2. Full screen, slide number 2. Well, what I put together is really very theoretical. It is not illustrated in the same manner of actually what you do and how you do, because I haven't really been teaching actively, so I don't have active teaching material to share with you. But this is really meant much more for us faculty to get an overall framework, and I believe that Holson has already kind of covered it. So it might be a lot of repetition. And if it is a repetition, it reinforces what he's saying. And if it adds a few more things, that's all to our benefit. So you'll have to bear with me on that. So the 3 sessions that we have, the first one I call theory. I've lost the screen once again. Can I get it back, please?
Just a second, Aruna is, I think, having a little bit of connectivity. We'll just put it back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just represent.
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, these are the 3 sessions. The first one I've called theory. It's like an overview of this course that we call materials and construction. It's an overview, how it is situated in the broad scheme of things. And the second session I've called practice. It is going into greater detail of how we look at the way materials and construction happen in our world and how that becomes a field from which we devise our teaching methodologies and our teaching material. And the last one is, I've called it pedagogy. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think you pronounce it pedagogy or pedagogy. Vibhuti, you'll have to correct me, whichever way.
I think I would go with goji, as in logi and all those.
Okay, so it's pedagogy.
Technology. That would be my guess, but yeah.
Yeah, that was my habit, so I just wanted to check it out. So pedagogy it is, and that really looks at the manner in which we structure our teaching and deal with the material, how we encourage the different modes of learning, of which I can already get some whiffs, the modes of learning from our previous presentation. So we go on to the next slide. So the thing that is not sufficiently emphasized in both, when we look at materials and construction as a subject and design studio is another area of work in the architecture course, we don't clearly establish this absolutely umbilical connection between designing buildings and the means of building. There is no such thing as designing buildings without the means of building. And it is because of the means of building having evolved and grown over a period of time that we're able to even conceive of certain kinds of design. And there is an interplay between these two things. Somehow the design as a conceptual freeway of symbolism and language, etc., runs away from the act of building. And I think that has to be tethered back into the means of building as the ground from which design thinking should emerge. And I think this is something that we need to establish both in the design studio and equally in the materials and construction course, that this, what you're learning, is for the design of buildings, not something which stands alone by itself. Yeah. Next. And yes, here's an example. I mean, you have an igloo on the left-hand side, and there's an ice hotel on the igloo on the right-hand side and ice hotel on the left-hand side. Igloo is a very old thing. Ice hotel is relatively recent. It's become a tourism thing. And the people who do the ice hotels understand their material and its potentialities. And they know how to use its potentialities in very imaginative ways. But the material is the same. And there are certain principles attached to the use of that material, which you then deploy to create the new architecture. So here's a simple example of that relationship. Go to the next one. Another one, it's the same kind of an idea, but here's a different set of materials on the right-hand side, something that looks primitive to us, although it's pretty sophisticated. Interesting that on the right-hand side, you have bamboo, which is bent, straight as well as bent, and used variously. And that it is clad on the outside to create this interior space. And now, as people learn more about the strengths of bamboos, types of bamboos, ways of joining bamboos together, structural systems that can be devised out of it, and so on and so forth, you've got a contemporary architecture on the left-hand side, which uses bamboo as its primary material. But it is the understanding of the material, its technology, its rules of use, its potentialities of use, its deeper understanding, scientific understanding, that leads to this very fine architecture that we see on the left-hand side. So the two things, again, to reinforce the point, are umbilically connected, just like the child is connected to the womb of the mother. It's like that. It's that stronger connection. Next. And here we have something else. I mean, trying to reach out to the ultimate possibility. In every culture, at every time, when people have got together, they've always enjoyed the idea of challenges and to exceed the previous work by new potentialities. On the right-hand side, you have Notre Dame, which is sadly burned down. But for its time, my gosh, what a remarkable achievement it is. And it is a demonstration of the depth of understanding of building in stone, compressive systems, and then cladding a roof, which is primarily of timber and shingles. So here you have, what can you do if you know your ways of building? Amazing. And on the left-hand side is one of our latest miracles. Of course, the systems of construction, potentialities of construction, have now multiplied 100-fold, 1,000-fold, and all kinds of things have now become possible. But none of this that you see, even in this building on the left-hand side, is without its logic of construction. The broader base at the bottom, and it's narrowing up to the pinnacle. And so there's an understanding of how the thing is to be built, and it is with the understanding of how the thing is to be built that the conception also occurs. And sometimes the desire for reaching somewhere also develops the ways of building accordingly. Next. This is my statement of the complete architect. For me, the architect is beyond the maker of cultural artifacts. We have always, when I was a student, at least in my earlier years as a student, we learned architecture as a making of cultural artifacts, about aesthetics and philosophies and languages of expression and meaning and so on and so forth. We were really involved with that. And that's what we thought was the primary purpose of architecture. And that was why it has been put on a pedestal as one of the greatest arts. But as time moved on, and as you saw yourself as part of a broader movement in society and in the nation, you realize that you're also a development practitioner. You are a participant in the movement of society towards a better life for everyone. So you're a development practitioner, and that has certain implications about how you view architecture and how you view your role as an architect. And then when this takes on a certain scale, the activity of building takes on a certain scale, it has enormous environmental impacts, and that we all know now. That I don't need to reinforce that or explain that. And so, as the architect practices, uses the means and materials of construction, has also to be wary or to be aware of the environmental impact of what they are doing, and also becomes then an environmental steward. So when you have these three roles of architecture put together, it is only then that you get a complete designer of the built environment. Take out any one of them, you don't have a complete designer. Next. Yeah, is this the next slide or is one before this? Yeah, this one. So as we were talking about development, as a part of our materials and construction course, especially in a country like India, which is changing so rapidly, and it is having to cope with new challenges every day of urbanization and so on, we need to be aware of what are our present systems of building delivery. What is the building industry? The materials and construction course has to put us in touch with that in some way or the other. You have to know that it is not merely selecting one material or working out a detail or doing some bit of design with building materials and so on. It is understanding the production of the built environment through the systems of delivery, through the building industry itself. And as you can see, that the systems of building delivery for the building on the right organization, and the one on the left-hand side is yet another kind, much more sophisticated, more complex. So this aspect, maybe in the more senior years, needs to be brought home to the designer. Next. Yeah, you've got a famous building on the left-hand side. I don't know if many of you will recognize this. This is the house that Philip Johnson built for himself. Or he built for someone else. I think it's his own house in a park, in a beautiful garden. And guess what the materials are? Plate glass and steel. That's the principal set of materials of the building. The modern materials, so we call them modern materials. And on the right-hand side, you have another building, very modern as you can see. But guess what the materials are? It's timber. It's just timber and stone. Those are the materials on the right-hand side. Why is there this difference? why was it that at that time, when Johnson built his own home, this was considered the chic thing, the right thing to do, modern thing to do? And why is it on the right-hand side, what we see is the right thing to do, the chic thing to do? It's modern thing to do. It's the futurist thing to do. Good question. Next. So, countries like ours, where there is rapid urbanization and economic growth, that means people are looking for a better life and are gradually getting a better life. Some people are getting very much left behind, but nevertheless, I think gradually there's an improvement of the economic condition. And there's an economic growth to meet basic needs of a growing population. And what will happen is that we'll be building large amounts of building. There are many, many numbers that have been floated around, but to put it simply, we expect that in the next decade or two, we'll build more as build space than we have built in all of history. That much now new building is coming our way. And when that happens at such scale, there's going to be drastic environmental impact. And so part of what we have to incorporate in our thinking about construction and materials is the environmental evaluation of construction and construction system, materials and construction systems. On the left-hand side, you see a multi-story building. This is built in London, by the way. And guess what its structure is made out of? Timber. It's timber, load-bearing and flexural timber structure that meets all safety and structural regulations and fire safety regulations. But why did they do it? Because it's a renewable material. That's why they did it. Whereas the building on the right-hand side, which is also considered, very clever and very modern, these are these tubular boxes are made of steel and glass piled up upon one another, something that would have been done. We would have praised it sky high in the 80s and 90s, thereabouts. But today we say, my gosh, why did they choose to build out of these materials? What for? It's the wrong way to go. These are very high embodied energy materials. Why do you want to use them? So if we were to evaluate all of this, there are already in our literature many concepts which can be studied, which can be applied in our courses to the problems that we do or the research that we conduct, like cradle to cradle. We know about that, how something originates in nature, then it's converted into something which can be used as a building material, then it becomes part of a building, then it lasts through the building's life, and then eventually it is taken out of the building and it has to go back into nature. Whether it can go back into nature or not is a question, or can it go back as a recycled material for reuse? So then, in order to minimize the impact on the primary source of materials, you must become more efficient in the use of materials. You must reuse things that have been used in the past, see if you can use them again. And you must recycle, reconvert what is waste into something useful so that the exploitation of primary source is reduced. That's a theoretical framework that we need to apply to our selection of construction materials, to our selection of construction systems. Same with whether it is a renewable resource or a non-renewable resource, whether something is abundant or is scarce. And very important today, what is the carbon emissions impact of a building material? You have this contrast right in front of you in these pictures. On the left, actually, you are sequestering carbon in the building. On the right, you are releasing carbon dioxide at a phenomenal rate from the building because of the steel and glass, predominance of steel and glass. So these are things that need to be part of our course. Then, this is something that we use in our office, by the way. Each time we design a building, we treat it as a new challenge. And we look at every element of the building, its roof, its wall, its windows, its floors, doors, ceilings, etc. And we write a component or element performance brief. What does this have to achieve? Okay, and how can we achieve that by applying the principles that we discussed in the last slide? And so the building performance constitutes these several things. First of all, a building has to have integrity. It has to hold together. All right. How does a building hold together? Why doesn't it just fall apart? How does it hold together? What are the principles by which it is held together? It also serves the purpose of separating space from space, inside from outside. What is this separation? What is the need for this separation? What kinds of separation are we talking about? Moisture, rain, heat. What kinds of separation? Noise. So there is separation. Then there is weathering. A building, a material or a component is incorporated into the building. A building usually lives for a long time. How will it last? How does the wind and the rain, etc., and the compounds, gases, etc., in the atmosphere react with the building or with the material? How does it weather? How is its use going to, what is its wear and tear, whether it's moving parts or abrasion of the floor, of the surfaces, and so on? What about its thermal performance? What about its illuminance performance, reflectivity, and so on? Acoustic. And then finally, of course, there's a desire. I think we all share that whatever we do should lift our souls, our spirits up. It should be beautiful. There is an aesthetic desire. So we actually systematically write the building or building component performance brief and then design. That enables us to innovate, to find more appropriate solutions. So this is a framework for working on construction details or analyzing construction systems. Next. So the aesthetic part of it. So here's a picture of one building, the development alternatives building, where the result of the building is a natural materiality. And this is a result from the first principles that we saw about sustainability, about environmental responsibility. Second principles that we saw about the performance of the different components, whether it is the window or the wall or the framework on the outside of this building and so on. And the aesthetic that results is a working out with sensitivity of the designer, working out of its character to produce something that we can enjoy, which we can also understand as we look at it. Next. And when you get really close to the building, materials have texture, ways of building have texture, they have junctions, they have a certain vocabulary that emerges out of the way they are put together. They have accent, and you can add accent. There's color, and so on. So these are all aspects that you explore in the aesthetics. An aesthetics that is emerging from the application of principles. Aesthetics are not here preconceived as, something from Star Trek or something, I don't know, from somewhere else. They are not preconceived. They are discovered. They are evolved. And I think that's the way we ought to be learning about building construction. Next. Another discipline of building is something that we need to look at carefully, is that buildings are assemblies. You usually, mostly, you start from the ground and you work upwards. And you do one thing, and then you do something on top of that, then you do something on top of that, and then you build a wall, and then if it's not beautifully finished in the first go, then you plaster it. Sometimes you plaster it with rough plaster, and then you come back and finish it with fine plaster. Vibhuti will tell us about how this whole process of sequencing and obtaining precision at the end of the day was a series of layers on rough stone masonry, then a layer of lime plaster of a certain kind of consistency applied on top of it, then a final layer applied on top of that, and a finishing hard layer applied on top of that to give you the hard, clear precision that you need. So understanding, oh dear, my battery is about to run. Give me a minute. I'm just going to put my computer onto the power socket. Just a minute. Hopefully that saved it. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I was talking about understanding buildings as assembly systems, which have a sequence of making. Here you can see, for instance, that there's a ferrocement shell being precast, then it has to be lifted in position, then it has to be adjusted in position, then it is finished. And as you adjust anything that is prefabricated or precast, you know that your building systems are not that precise. They're not as precise as your viewing glasses or lenses or any of those micro stuff that we get nowadays. They're a little bit crude. And so we have to understand how you need to have dimensional tolerance in the way you design. What you give as a dimension, 230 mm thick as a wall or 200 mm thick as a wall, actually is an approximation, right? And in the conception of the building or any assembly, there are always dimensional tolerances. And then you try to, if you so desire, to reach a level of precision in the appearance of the building, if that is what you actually desire. So understanding building assembly as a process is one of the parameters of construction, materials and construction courses. Okay, next. So this really brings me to the end of my first session. What we have said is that we understand absolutely the integral relationship between the designing of buildings and the means of building, that we are aware and will be aware through our courses of systems of building delivery and the building industry, that we'll be aware of environmental impact, and that we'll have ways of evaluating it and making our judgments and choices, because through that process, that when we look at details of construction or study any building or devise any detail of construction, we are actually looking at building performance, and we're also looking at building assembly. So this, so to speak, is a theoretical underlying principle, set of underlying principles that govern the content, the detailed content of all that we deliver in our courses. So this is the end of session one. So if there are people who want to ask some questions now or want some clarifications or offer some comments, I'll be happy.
So if I can start, Professor Lal, Professor A.B. Lal was also my teacher, I must say. He taught me in my fourth year, where my interest in Vastu Vidya was shaping up. And so you can imagine the impact he has on thinking that, in fundamental rudimentary questions. Just to start the conversation, Professor Lal, I'm quite intrigued by your metaphor of the umbilical cord and how, the relationship of the new with the old is like from a child to the mother through an umbilical cord. But what happens when, the mother is modernism and the child's yearning is its roots, which is traditional. What is the nature of that relationship with one's culture, one's scientific temper, one's Bauhaus aspirations? What happens in that scenario?
Such a beautiful question, Vibhuti. Really good. I do some thinking about this in the next session, but to answer this, I would simply say this, that change is inevitable. Return to a past is a fantasy. It can be enjoyed in artificial circumstances, occasionally, to remember and to sample the qualities and the values of the past. But to return to the past for a general way of life would not be possible. The forces of change, the drivers of the economy, of social change, culture, have such a huge momentum. They have also an inertia that is very difficult to change their direction of change, which you may wish to intercede in. That is what I was being, when you talk about sustainability, and I'll come back to this idea of valuing craft and the joy of making. You want, even in this, what do you call it? The juggernaut of change that is upon us, you still want to recover some sanity, some beauty, some value, and you have to intercede with that. And how you do that is the question. And I think you can sow the germs of that possibility in the architecture courses that we have here. So I don't consider the two things as oppositions. I see them as I have a phrase which I'll quote later on, as opportunities for a synthesizing approach. We'll come to that.
My second question was actually relates to the examples that you showed of the inspiration from sort of a traditional model to translation of its learning to a modern one. Now, when you showed the bamboo structure or the igloo, what the construction of that involves a sort of a knowledge system, a vocabulary, processes that are not shared by the ice hotel, probably. What I mean is when one translates a piece of vernacular architecture in terms of drawing sections, elevations, you've already changed the vernacular. It's no longer vernacular because it's now a set of drawings that are then replicated. What gets left out in the process is the cultural knowledge system of the entire which has existed for so long without the drawings. How do you think this is a fair way of sort of bringing it to the future without with leaving out all the things you say you value, like the culture, the roots, the spirit of the place, but one has left it out already as soon as you convert it into these cold drawings?
Well, I think it's an interesting discussion about the use of drawings, and drawing as a technique. Very interesting. But to answer your fundamental point, I think the traditional knowledge systems, not only the practicalities, the pragmatics of it, how you make something, what implements you have, how you understand the material, what you can do with it, and how you can play with it, and what you can produce with it. Those are sort of practical ways of doing things, but there are deeper meanings about the significances attached to what you make, and even how you make, when you make, etc., which speak to a deeper sense of ourselves in the world. And I think that is very important. And there is no reason why those knowledges and sensibilities cannot be taken forward even with change. There is no reason why you cannot. People still write fantastic poetry, very lyrical poetry, but they write political poetry, which is extremely lyrical, and political poetry, which uses all the metaphors through the ages, and they write poetry which talks to the world today. So I do think that we don't necessarily lose it. We lose it, coming to your drawing issue, if the process of drawing is seen as a mere process of simplistic abstraction. A process of drawing is a process of explaining to yourself what you're imagining and thinking about. That is the process of drawing. And I completely agree with you. When you draw with your hand, okay, you're closer to that possibility. When you draw 10 removed through the clicks of the mouse, you are further and further away from that possibility. You don't feel the drawing anymore. You just don't feel it. When your hand moves with a pencil, all right, and you draw the same line again and again, it's not quite right, it's not the right shape, it's not the right location. I want to look at it from this side and that side. You want to give it an expression from your own imagination. So I think that's a separate part of our learning about design, which is very important, I think. And I'll come to that also in the pedagogy part. Yeah. Go.
Sure, and there are questions to do with desire, aesthetics, and precision that you raise, and these are probably questions which require a sort of a longer session with you. There is one question on the chat. Srijani, would you like to unmute yourself and ask, please, quickly?
Yes. Good morning, sir. So actually, you were talking about building performances and various criterias for, according to you, the way you have placed it, it had some order, and of course there is some preference. I wanted to know that do you agree with the current building performance parameters and rating system which is being followed in the current rating system, LEED, Griha? Are they sufficient? They need any revisit as per the current situation?
Well, you know what? The rating systems don't tell you anything about designing, okay? They only evaluate what the results of whatever your design might have been, and usually numerical results, okay? And it is simply a measurement of this or a measurement of that, and slightly better than that, or much better than the other one, and so on. They say nothing about design, or the integration of design, elegance of design, or the economy of design, right? They say nothing at nothing. So please don't treat that as a Bible. Keep that on the side. Don't bring that into the design studio ever. That's my advice. You go there if you want to test whether your design is meeting certain broad sets of environmental criteria. And how well are you doing from that point of view for testing it, but it doesn't tell you how to design. Okay, so I think so let's just keep that in the second drawer. Open that drawer only at a certain time.
Yes,
but the first drawer should be the principles that drive your design. Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Amrita, you'd like to ask something about history and sequence of projects?
Yes. So actually there are 2 points, but maybe they are correlated. I don't know. So at some point, sir, you mentioned that history of construction is something that we need to engage with, the history of that idea of anything that the process is. And on the other side, when you were talking about your sequence of the project itself, and you were saying that aesthetics comes in the end. But for example, in your jack arch, the process that you showed, that itself implicates a sort of aesthetics, right? I mean, the decision to do that came right in the beginning of your sequence, I imagine. And so,
Not at all.
so I don't know. So does that implicate the aesthetics, and hence is that a connection to history that you're talking about, or is it about the making of things?
Okay. So there are two different things we're talking about. Two, I think, slight difference in the meaning of the term history. In this case, looking at materials and construction, I'm thinking of history as a process of evolution and change in the material culture. The means with which you can build, the materials that you can explore, and the techniques that you develop in the material culture, which is different from a history of significances and meanings. All right, so let's not confuse the two. I'm talking much more about material culture here. However, no matter what you do, there is an intention of conveying significance and meaning. Yeah. So in choosing to build with a certain set of materials to meet contemporary needs of a 6-story tall building, which needs to have a high level of comfort and environmental performance, but choosing to use a certain way of building is conveying a certain meaning in itself. All right. Then there is a play with the opportunities of that language of construction to introduce memory, all right, symbol. And that is part of any architecture. So for instance, it's a courtyard house, it's a courtyard building. And the center of the courtyard is a tulsi plant. Why should you do that? What is so? You do that because there's a meaning of the sacredness of that space, all right? In the pattern of the wall that you might have seen, the wall is made out of compressed fly ash block, which has got an earth tint added to it. Otherwise, it's gray, but there's an earth tint added to it. Why did we add the earth tint? Because we wanted to convey the idea that it is of the earth and not from the electricity production plant. Okay. In that wall, there's a sprinkling of red brick here and there, random. Where does that come from? It comes from the booty of the sari, the block printing of the sari, all right, of the Jaipur block printing, right? So there are these. So the opportunity arises, and then you play with it as a designer to give it meaning and symbolism. You can choose whichever way you wish to go. And in this case, I mean, I'm an old Dilli wala, so I'm tied to some of these things. So it comes out. Yeah.
So we can move to the next session, but quickly, I'm reminded of, from the fly ash gray to be, which was tinged with an earth color. I'm reminded of Jai Singh in the 18th century, who did exactly the same, that he, in rubble masonry, he colored his city Geru to suggest it is built in red sandstone, which was, of course, the imperial color of Mughals at that time. So there is politics of material as well as well-intentioned, emphasis on wanting to rouse memory as well. So yeah, I mean.
Absolutely. So although the aesthetic part was listed at the end, but it was the only one in capitals.
Yes, I know.
So there we are. Okay.
So should the next section? Is that
I'll present now. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Practice.
Practice, yeah. Here we come. Practice. So this word here refers to the field of doing, the field of what has been done and what is being done, what is being experimented with, and what is about to come to do. It's about the field of doing. And so this is another side of materials in construction. And we'll look at that now. Next. This gentleman in the middle, I don't know if you recognize him, is one Mr. Renzo Piano. Mr. Renzo Piano is one of the most amazingly innovative and sensitive architects that I know today. He is so genuine, he's so authentic, and he's not the one for flash and show, but he's one for sensitivity and exploration. What we see on the right-hand side are 3 photographs. The top 2 photographs are the roof of the Museum of Natural History in San Francisco, which is a green roof, and the roof has these oculi which can be opened and shut, as you can see. And under this domical space, or this projecting dome, an internal tropical garden into which the light filters from above, and it is a conditioned space. Now, none of this is something that was immediately available to Mr. Piano when he started thinking of the building. He explored the possibilities, and then he worked with the people who know how to build. They know about building construction materials. They know about different products that are in the market, people who are doing various kinds of things, who can make all kinds of things. They know about that. And then he goes to work with those guys. And as he goes to work with them, they are then able to find the solutions that would suit this building. Of course, the first time around, they would be a little expensive, no doubt. But it was because he took it upon himself to be a critical agent of the evolution of construction technologies. He was not there simply to receive what was available in the local market. टाइल ऐसा मिलता है, हार्डवेयर ये मिल रहा है, बोर्ड ये चीज है, वगैरह वगैरह, इसको लगा दो, ये सस्ते में, ये महंगा है. He is not one of those. He says, no, my buildings are looking for something much further than that. And we have to find solutions for it. And so it requires the architect, the design community, I wouldn't say the architect, the design community, who are midstream between the stream that comes down to them from the building industry. So it starts from the mining from natural resources, and then it comes to production systems and building components industry. And then it comes to the designer, and the designer puts it all together. And the designer then proposes what can be built. And the designer also has to communicate with the people who will use the building, what he's trying to achieve and why it's going to be built in this way. So you become, as designers, critical agents in the evolution of ways of building. And so you collaborate upstream with those who are there in the building industry to make things, to explore materials and so on. You tell them, you know what I want? I want a lightweight material which has very low carbon emissions, but which has very good insulation. That's what I want for my external walls. Can you please try this out? Can you please try that out? Who's going to work on it? He asks for it, and so on. So you make demands. So much of the development of hardware, for instance, that you see, or many of the finishing things, the finishing stuff is all about style and appearance. But these are also desires expressed by designers, to which the suppliers then respond. Similarly, the designers offer possibilities to the users and put them together in buildings. So not to forget the role of the architect or the designer as a critical agent in the evolution of how you build. It's never a static thing. Next. When we talk of a course, we do talk about contemporary relevance. And here's a little difference between what we saw Olsen say just a little while ago and what I am proposing at this, here. What he said was that every school of architecture can choose to do what it wants to do. It has an emphasis on this thing or an emphasis. We are a design school, we are a technology school, we are a history and theory school, we are a sustainability school, we are a craft school, we are like that. Every architecture school can do that, choose its thing, sell its wares, and students can choose if they like you, if they think that you're doing the right thing, or the things that they jive with, then they'll come to you and you deliver to them whatever it is that you want to focus on. I think that in our part of the world, we do not actually have that luxury. I think we need to have a broad-based course that has contemporary relevance. A course that spans across from tradition to modernity, or by modernity here, I don't necessarily mean modernity in the philosophical sense of the modern, all right? There's a philosophical meaning of modern. I'm talking about modernity in terms of that which is contemporary and real to everybody's life, what is happening and what is needed in that sense. Similarly, from traditional crafts to sophisticated technologies, you have to see how this bridges across. And this is necessary. This is necessary because you have to understand that we have growing populations, that there is a growing shift towards urbanization, and there's a much greater demand for building material and a demand for answering shelter needs rapidly. Can't forget it. You have to answer that. But then how do you deal with this? The way I say it is that you must recognize the opportunities of continuity. Vibhuti, this is about seeing all that is of value in our crafts and traditional practices, knowledge and technical information, whatever, all that is there. Or recognize the opportunities of continuity and deal with the necessities of change. And deal with the necessities of change. That is what you have to do. And this is a kind of a framework, let us say, for answering your big question, or at least attempting to answer that big question. So I'm talking about courses that must have contemporary relevance. And it is from contemporary relevance that we construct the content and the methods of our course. Next slide. And this is close to what Vibhuti was alluding to a little earlier, very close to it. That, yeah, this one. As we look at the shift or the change from tradition towards what is happening now, from the crafts to complicated, all kinds of elaborate technologies, what is actually happening is there is a cultural shift. And the cultural shift is probably the most troubling shift that we have to contend with and we have to find answers to. As you go towards mechanization and mass production of anything, what happens is that most people engaged in the processes of making buildings become mere automatons. They lose their imaginative impulse. They lose their creative space. How do you deal with the need of rapid, large-scale production while retaining the initiative of the individual imagination, while retaining the dignity of the person contributing intellectually, imaginatively to the process of building? how do you do that? That's a real issue that we have to think about. And so the cultural aspect that we have to really evaluate is the most difficult one and is a key one. The other two are about, if you look at the technical side, what is happening in the technical side is that as you invest more and more into automation and large-scale machine production, you're actually taking away the role of building production from as a means of distributing wealth and knowledge. Making buildings in small economies, in traditional economies, was a way of distributing wealth and of knowledge, sharing it and distributing it. As you move further and further away from it, you lose that distribution. You get more concentration of wealth. The guy who invested in the big machine makes all the money, and nobody can participate in the process. You're just left on the street selling, vegetables and fruits, or driving a rickshaw. You have no space left. That's a technical implication. There's the environmental implication. As you move more and more towards steel, cement, stainless steel, aluminum, glass, ceramics, you're running away from nature. Okay? So there are these three dimensions for evaluating the change that we are undergoing. And here, to answer the previous question, I think it's no use just looking at materials and construction as being a materials and construction course. There's a history course, there's a theory of architecture course. Both these courses also address these issues. They should. So you begin to then see that the history course, the theory of architecture course, overlays over the material and construction course. And you begin to see the integral value of materials and construction as part of the totality of architectural design, rather than as an independent, standalone technical, learning some theorems, etc. So I think this is where also it has to be addressed. Next. This is just an example. There is this shift happening. So there are three levels that you have: basic materials themselves. New kinds of materials are being discovered or made, and so on and so forth, alloys and glasses, and cements, even cements, binding compounds, waterproofing compounds, sheeting materials, all kinds of protective layers, paints, God knows. So many new things are happening right now. And there is a movement. And so I think it is important for us to understand what changes when you go from lime to cement. What changes when you go from cement to a polymer? What changes when you go from handcraft to precast? What is the significance of that change? And what changes when you go from precast to parametric construction, where you can define any curvature, any profile, and the machine will cut it for you exactly as you need it, etc. What is the meaning of this change? Is it simply that you can do something, or there is something more significant that is happening under that we need to be aware of? And so on. And then how you put things together. You put thatch together by a certain logic. That was a logic of using small elements that could be overlaid one on top of the other so that the water could flow down, and you had to have a slope sufficient for the water not to be pushed back up, through the shingles up into the roof, or for the wind to blow it off. So there was a certain logic of making it. But then you come with large size sheets, and they can be bolted and they are furrowed, and you can install it, you can forget it. Something else has happened. Your whole attitude to the roof is gone. The whole feeling, the appearance has changed completely. And now you want to also make a roof which has, in one shot, given you waterproofing, ease of assembly, long life, insulation. What more do you want? That's what you're getting. Anything wrong with that? Not necessarily. So this is what is happening. And I think people, as a course, we need to also understand, we should not divide, traditional materials and modern materials and advanced materials. There's no such categorization. It is a continuum of some kind, which needs to be understood as a continuum. Next. Now, this is an attempt here, which we in our practice try to work out. We call it the industrial principle. We say that the core of the industrial principle is that it enables a person to become more productive, more efficient in the use of material, less wastage, can produce a product which is more reliable, will not vary too much, can assure its properties, and it also brings down the cost. And if it brings down the cost, it means that one person can earn more money, improve their income. So these are means by which, by application of an industrial principle, you can have good quality construction at low cost and with great economy, etc., and improve the income of those who are undertaking it, provided that these technologies that you create for ramping up the industrial production are such that they have low investment, simple ways of improving productivity, not a huge, $10 million plant that has to be made or making something extraordinary, etc. No, but something that costs you 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs to install, like you can see here. The machine that makes these blocks on the left-hand side can produce 4,000 blocks a day. The casts that you can, for doing the jalis, can produce whatever, one cast can produce 10 or 20 square meters a day by one person, and so on. So, and there are examples of this like ferro cement, precast concrete, and this is again the development alternatives building where we use the stabilized mud block, the stabilized Falgi block, the terracotta screen, and woodwork workshop that was installed at site using harvested timber from a controlled forest. So I think this is another principle that needs to be understood. It is a way of negotiating between tradition and modernity. Yeah. Next. And then, of course, we cannot run away from the necessity of pursuing sustainability. And there are two levels of it. One is that you have to reduce the embodied energy of construction from what has now become current. So low steel intensity, use of timber or biomass, bamboo, earth, stone, and hybrid structures for structural systems, as has been done in the DA building, for structural systems to have low embodied energy. And you need structural systems that can span large distances, that can build somewhat taller buildings, and also to be built reasonably quickly, etc. So this is pursuing sustainability by building with low embodied energy structural systems, something that we have to learn. Here, materials and construction, straight in connection with structures course. Next. And then, of course, as I was telling you earlier, that you write the specifications for every part of the building, and then you choose what you want to build with, right? And you say to yourself, we are not going to do this, we're not going to do that. We will minimize the glass, we'll have no aluminum, and there'll be no synthetic paint, okay? That's a rule. And then you choose the different materials of construction with which you build the building. And then you explore what those potentials are. And you don't say no to everything, of course not. But to use wherever there is a high impact, high environmental impact material that you are having to use, you use it with extraordinary care and with great efficiency. That's what is required. Next. So this is the practice session. We looked at architect as a critical agent. That's an important role for designers. We looked at the necessity of the course as a whole having contemporary relevance. And then there are these three dimensions of evaluating the changes that are occurring, moving from tradition to the future. And so there is a matrix of evolution of change in building materials and technologies that we can draw up so that we understand, we kind of map the whole thing. We see it in front of us. Look, this is what's happening. This is where we are today. So that as designers, if you want to be critical agents, you have to understand that map. You have to understand the industrial principle. It is going to be a need of the day for meeting the requirements of shelter, and you must pursue sustainability. Yeah.
So I think those are quite pertinent issues, and the three shifts you mentioned, the cultural, the technological, and the environmental shift, is probably seen much more pronounced, you know, as a much more pronounced phenomenon by a certain generation. For example, the students who are born with the you know, with a mobile phone in hand, they do not see this technological shift. They do not actually you know, gain so much joy from, you know, the pressure of the pencil on a cartridge sheet. They probably gain, you know, more joy from digital art and digital representation. So that's also one's concern. Are we kind of over sentimentalizing you know, our past, our roots, our, you know, the experiential, the emotional, the soul, which and if we're not, then how do you kind of make it a value for the current millennials who at times glaze over and think, you know, what the hell are they talking about? I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a very, it's almost like an existential question, because this is one's own personal belief, of course, right? My personal belief is that you don't feel motivated to do anything until you know what your role is in this world. Otherwise, you're just either enjoying that or enjoying this, and for some time this and sometimes that. And then you get bored with it, and then you go on for something more novel. And life becomes ever more hollow. And how do you know where you are in the world? You know it by two means. One is what I call a horizontal mapping exploration. What's happening in my environment, in the surrounding environments globally today? Where? What is it, you know, coronavirus here in India or in Delhi in relation to its spread all over the globe? You know, you kind of get a feel of it. Or practice of architecture or building, or the issues of building here in my country as compared to other parts of the world. There's a kind of horizontal mapping that you need to do. And you have to then define your own position within that horizontal map. Similarly, you have to do a vertical map, which goes into time. It explains to you, how do I come to be what I am today? Where did I come from? We all have a past. And inevitably, just the umbilical metaphor once again, we are a product of the past. We're a child of the past. Unless we know what we are a child of, how can we be motivated toward the future? All right. So I think that vertical exploration of time must be integral. And I think this is what these two kinds of mapping and knowing where you are is education. That's education.
And my second question was about your reframing of who an architect is, from a practitioner to being a critical agent, from being a leader to a collaborator. Now, that should obviously have an effect on the curriculum itself, because you start from profiling the graduate. Now, if this graduate is going to be a critical agent, then the current curriculum is in a way not serving that ambition.
Yeah.
And my second related question is that, why do you think there is such lack of respect and understanding of architectural practice in the society, when our politicians don't take us seriously? I mean, we are the last people they would talk to in any developmental project. So these two things, if you could sort of share your thoughts with us on.
Yeah, I try to. I know it's a difficult one. This one, I tried to respond to it in the last session on pedagogy, about how you begin to see yourself as a designer who has the potential of being a critical agent, and so there's a process by which this critical agency is formed within the designer, because the designer is simply not a consumer. There's a difference between a consumer and a critical user, right? So it is the criticality with which you consume that makes you a critical agent, right? So for instance, our son happens to say he has chosen to become a baker, all right? It's a good story. He has chosen to become a baker, but he's producing sourdough and he's using very little maida. He's using all kinds of other flours. Why? He says, we have just messed up our digestive systems and invited cancer into our bodies for the last 100 years, like just going the wrong way. So he is now become a critical agent. He is wanting to change the direction of how things are happening. And how has he done that? Through a process of reflection and analysis. That is how he's done it. So that was your answer to the first question. What was the second one once again? It was about
the value of practice and the practitioner for the society.
Value of practice in society. Boy, we've seen this. We've seen this in this events that are unfolding on Rajpath, right? And I think it is that the professions of the built environment have not done their work of communicating on social platforms in languages that can be understood widely what they do and how they bring quality of life, how they bring security, long-term security of life to everybody's living environment. How they do it? They don't. They have sold themselves as stylists. That's where the problem is. And they have been encouraged to sell themselves as stylists by those who sell tiles, those who sell sanitary stuff, those who sell blinds, who sell paints, who sell glasses. They've reinforced this notion of the architect being a stylist. No fundamental value to life. And really, the profession is entirely to blame for it. We have to get organized.
And indeed, also to mention a matter of huge shame for a profession in regard to how we've treated our construction workers, who should be part of our extended family, and we have, So I'm going to open the questions. There are some questions lined up here. Ekta, would you like to quickly answer? Read your question. Would you like to do that?
Hi, good morning, sir. Hi, Vibhuti. Hello, everybody. So happy to hear all of you and get gyan, which we will get to the end of our life from you, sir. So my question was, and I ask that question myself every day, don't you think as we, at least the younger generation, are seduced by technology and the quick fix or efficiency that high tech affords, that we are losing the softer skills of architecture? Our care factor is diminished considerably as we want to do things quicker, the bigger, better, fancier conundrum.
I think that's an obvious one.
What's happening? I agree.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, but I tell you, this is a reality. Okay, let's put it to you from a different perspective. But for instance, if we talk about pollution-free and slum-free cities, okay, the rate at which people are moving into cities and how city populations are growing with inadequate planning and inadequate infrastructure and a terrible distribution of wealth so that people simply can't afford a decent home, the rate at which this is happening is rapid. So if you take your time over it, you'll get swallowed up. So there's no question that you also have to be swift and yet caring. I think you've asked a very good question, but that is the skill that we do need to develop. So it's not about the easy way of doing things fast. It is the difficult way of doing things properly, but swiftly. That's the challenge. Yeah.
And Ekta, of course, also feels it very critically because she's a landscape architect, so very closely works with environment, and so she's very passionate about the environmental issues. The next question is Gaurav Sanan. Would you like to read your question quickly, and then we'll move to the next session.
Hi, sir. Good morning.
Hi, Gaurav.
How are you, sir?
Alive.
So while we've been taught and we can think like a critical agent of change, a lot of young students do ask us, that, there has to be a commercial value of the career path that they have chosen.
Yeah.
While we try to teach them, we try to inculcate the values which will probably help them think in the right way. But, in the long run, realizing through the career paths that whether this thinking and actually the commercial value of the career path can actually exist together, or what could we do during the education process to help them achieve that?
Yeah, more and more I've been advising youngsters now who have entered into the architecture profession recently, or our students. I've been saying that gone are the days where you put up a nice signboard outside your door with a lovely, attractive logo and a fabulous website to boot, and then expect people to come to you and say, will you please do me this beautiful design, and I'll do exactly what you say. And you wait for these people to come, and then when you start working with them, you find that they are at odds, you're at odds with them, and they're at odds with you, and it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And eventually, what you find is that you succumb because you have to earn your daily bread. So gone are the days where you can expect the boutique and the correct practice as designers to have people coming to you all the time. Few of us are lucky. After 40 years of reputation, I'm a little bit lucky that way. Okay, 40 years it took, right? I think the time is now for Gaurav, you and others to say, okay, I want a chap who's a construction guy, a woman who's a construction lady, and I want somebody who understands finance and banking. I want someone who understands environmental stuff, like Ekta. I want someone who understands engineering, environmental engineering, and legal systems. We're going to put together a company. We'll come up with solutions, and we are going to then sell our wares in the market. We're going to say, this is the way we do it. We design and build and deliver. Just like people make buckets and soaps, right? We do schools, we do hostels, we do homes, we do housing, and we design and build. Forget the Council of Architecture. They're not relevant anymore. Okay? No need to protect your title as architect by not signing up with a contractor, not signing up with an engineer. You have to act as building professionals, putting together your skills and knowledge and developing solutions. I know it's difficult and you have to invest a lot of time and money to reach that platform from where you can offer solutions. I'll give you a brilliant example. 2 years ago, when there was a huge influx of refugees into Europe from the Middle East wars, the Dutch government asked the Queen's architect, what should we do? How do we house these refugees? So the Queen's architect called a competition, an open competition for Dutch designers to propose housing solutions for the refugees. And then they promised that we will choose 6 designs and we'll give you funds to develop them as full-fledged prototypes, okay? Which they did. They developed full-fledged prototypes. And these prototypes were displayed in the city square. And all municipalities and mayors were invited to order their homes. And they ordered some homes. And these few of them are in business. Okay? Amazing. So there were architects, there were 2 or 3 architects. There was one chap who did a kind of a timber construction which could be placed one on top of the other. You can connect adjacent boxes. It needed very little, it was mobile, it needed very little foundation. It could be built up to 4 stories tall. You could integrate the services. Very, very clever, and very pleasant homes, and economically done. But the guy came up with a solution. He said, here it is. And then, of course, they modified it a little bit, etc. But they're in business. So I think that's the kind of way, I believe, the direction in which we have to move. We cannot be merely designers.
Okay, I think we can conclude our session on practice, and should we move to pedagogy?
Yeah, sure.
No, will you?
Yeah, presenting. Just a minute, little. 1 second.
You want to take a cup of tea first?
No, sir. Here it is.
Would you like a 5-minute break? Would you like a?
No, I'm okay.
You're okay. Okay.
I'm okay. Thanks.
Is that good to go?
Yep. We can go to the next page. Right. Just as Holstein was saying, learning happens not by receiving instruction. Learning happens by an internal activity where you absorb, reflect, and play with what you have heard or seen. And that reflection and play produces an integration within you when you really begin to understand what it means. Instruction by itself is not learning, it is merely instruction. So that's the first principle in pedagogy, that you have to set up methods by which the participant, the learner, The teachers have to set up a system whereby the participant and learner, and the teacher too is a learner, absorb and reflect on what they're doing actively. And there are two kinds of integration. One is a more abstract integration, which I call conceptual integration. And the other is an experiential integration. We move on to the next slide. Let me see what it says. Yeah. So again, I think repeating what Holstein had said, that the abstract side of learning is explicit learning, things for which you have words and you can discuss with words. And on the right-hand side, experiential learning is tacit learning, things for which you actually don't have words. I can't explain to anyone how I bicycle. I can't explain it. I just bicycle. And I know it, my body knows it, I know it, and there are no words to explain it. Similarly, when you engage in handling things, making things, playing with things, there's certain kinds of learning that happens, a wonderful exercise which bridged the two sides, the conceptual side and the experiential side that Holstein showed about the making of a rammed earth wall by students, is this only, that there is experiential learning. Once you've gone through that, your body has learned what that material is. You don't know it only as physics or chemistry or density or anything like that. You know it bodily, a direct knowledge. And you know, this is what craft is all about. The joy of craft is in the handling and in the making with your body. And that is, I think, very crucial as an aspect of tacit learning. And so on the explicit side, you use discussion, you use exploration, you use evaluation, but not instruction. Not instruction. You might have some instruction actually on the experiential side. Somebody can tell you wear a mask or wear goggles or don't hold the axe like this, hold it this way. Yeah, help you along. You may need some helping along, but it's really your own working of the mind that produces knowledge, that produces learning. And then between these two things, there is an iterative spiral. That means you do the same things again and again with rising levels of complexity. Again, Holstein was saying the same. I'm repeating what he said, but that is how we go from first, second to third, etc., to the fifth year as we complete our course. And so that, in a sense, is the broad model of the two kinds of learning in the materials and construction course. Okay? And then we'll look at what happens on the two sides as we go to the next slide. Okay. So what is inquiry and analysis? And what is mapping and observation? It is learning. There is a very important point here, that learning and ingesting means that, like, it has gone through your digestive tracts and the juices have been taken out and they are stored in your brains, in your body cells and in your brain. It is stored everywhere in your body. That's ingesting. So learning and ingesting concepts and principles is primary. Even when you're looking at something physical, you need to understand a concept that underlies that physical thing and the principles on which it is made. You need to understand that. Whereas encyclopedic information is really secondary. How many types of window are there? We go and find out how many types of window there are. I'll give you 2 weeks. And you go everywhere, you take lots of photographs, you go over the internet, you collect 1,000 types. Big deal. No point in doing all of this. Much better to say, this is how window works. This is what it is for. And look, these are the principles according to which this very clever window has been worked out. That's what you want to learn. So inquiry and analysis is about ingesting concepts and principles and not about encyclopedic information. And I'm afraid there has been a tendency for us to lean towards encyclopedic information. तेरी submission में ये तो था ही नहीं, ये तो तूने छोड़ ही दिया, तो complete नहीं हुआ, अरे, like that. So again, referring back to what we did in the previous session, there's the building performance side and there's the environmental evaluation side. Same concepts once again. On the building performance side, any exercise that you do, what are you looking at? You're looking at the integrity, separation, weathering, wear and tear, thermal performance, illuminance, acoustics, as well as the aesthetic properties of what you're doing. And you're looking at the environmental side, you're applying all of these principles which are listed on the right-hand side. And if you are a developmental practitioner, in other words, whatever you do is also a way of spreading income, wealth, and knowledge, you're also looking at the systems of building delivery. Are there guilds or bunches of trained craftspeople who are valued for their work, who grow in their work as they attend to new issues, new problems, new solutions? Or are people being used only as automatons? What is the structure of the building industry? To which kind of building industry has this product been produced, this building been produced? What is its role in the economic and social development of our society? Is something that we look at. That's an inquiry and analysis part. And similarly, mapping and observing, you see what's happening, you look at the markets, you look at building construction that's going on, you map and observe, but you map and observe using these concepts as an analytical frame. Next. And then, of course, learning by doing, physically learning by doing. Even sometimes you copy a detail. This is how, this is what an aluminum window frame looks like. And you copy a detail. You can copy that detail, copy paste nowadays. But if you were to draw it freehand, you do a critical reenactment of the making of the thing. You also ask yourself the question, as you're reenacting, you ask, what is the problem that is being solved in this configuration? Why is this aluminum frame shaped the way it is? What are the things that give it its shape? Not that this is the aluminum frame, but by drawing it, by feeling it, by asking questions around it, you critically reenact the making of that object based on certain principles and as a way of solving certain problems. And then, as a design problem is given to me, I would never pay attention to, and I would immediately go off to see the cinema or to the restaurant with my friends if I was given a task which had no challenge in it. I would just never do it. No point. There must be challenge. If there is no challenge, no go. Simple. So feeding is out. Over-demanding is out. But placing a challenge that draws you out, creates interest, makes you ask questions, stirs your imagination, that's in. Even when with the Council of Architecture, I used to go and वो होता था इनका system ना, you go and visit a school of architecture and say whether it's okay or not. तो workshop में जाते थे. तो जी mortise and tenon joint के ये sample रखे हुए हैं, इसके joint के वो sample रखे हुए हैं, ये बच्चों ने ये भी किया, बच्चों ने वो भी किया. All total बकवास, there's no learning at all, right? And no wonder nobody picks up any interest in it. So I think what learning by doing does is it gives you what's called a haptic familiarity. Again, Vibhuti, you have to tell me if I've got the right term here. It means that through the body you can feel it. You understand the thing as if the body is experiencing it. Yeah? And so when you experience a material through your body, it has a completely different meaning if you look as compared to looking at it on a photograph. Totally different thing. As you run your hand over a stone surface, gosh, it gives you something which you would not have done if you just looked at the photograph. Okay? So it gives you haptic familiarity. As you knock something, as you break something, as you cut something, as you mold something, it gives you that familiarity. And in that process, you inevitably develop a respect for the craft of making something. Then you say, "Arey, Mistri ji ko pata hai yaar, Mistri ji is a great guy," right? And you will not tell Mistri ji, ye to meri drawing mein to ye tha, aapne to kuch aur bana diya, ye to galat hai, isko tod do. You will never say that. You will ask Mistri ji, aapne aisa kyun kiya? फिर वो समझाएगा, सर जी आपने जो बनाया था ना वो ऐसा बन ही नहीं सकता, देख लो मटेरियल तो ये मांगता है, लकड़ी तो ये मांगती है, तो मैंने इसको इस तरह से बनाना पड़ा, देखो आप सीखो तो सही. So this gives you a respect for the craft. And I think there should be time for all this. I think this should be like a 3-year project. I would love to. Now I started doing pottery, by the way. I mean, it's been now a few years. And my God, how much joy it gives you to do something with your own hands. All right? And this joy is then translated in your conception of building itself. And I think this is learning by doing. That's the potential. So all our workshop exercises need to give enough time for you to do something beautifully, to do something really well. पहली दफे ठीक नहीं बना, फिर से बनाएंगे. दूसरी दफे ठीक नहीं बना, क्या बात थी, फिर से करेंगे. करते चले गए और देखो कितनी सुंदर चीज बनाई है, अब देखो ये मैंने बनाया. That kind of stuff. 1 साल लगा कोई बात नहीं, 2 साल लगे कोई बात नहीं. But you feel that you've achieved something. And I think that should be one of the things that we do. Next. And then, of course, again, Olsen has said it already, you must integrate with the design studio, and there must be a degree of challenge. And the design studio problem, or the brief, incorporates a demand for exploration and innovation in construction. It poses to you, it selects from your design some part which is a little bit complicated or can do something more than what you were thinking of, poses that to you as a problem to be explored, for which you may innovate a solution. You may try using different materials. You may try using different configurations. You may make small models of it, but it is integral to Design Studio. If Design Studio is 300 marks, 100 of those marks are reserved for designing a building, not designing a concept, designing a building. 100 of those, the making of the building is 100 marks. Okay, that must be there. And same way, you do need to do smaller exercises as part of your construction studio, where you have to do this reenactment. You may choose a design element. You might choose an analytical element, and you may work in teams to do something, okay? And these can be standalone, separate exercises, but they must have a design element in it. In other words, something which is not yet resolved. It is not simply repeating what has already been done by someone else, and this is how you do it. There's part of it, you may be taught how to make a joint, but what you're making a joint for and which kind of joint to use is part of a design problem. So there must be something that you need to innovate in your construction exercise. Then you begin to see construction as a creative process, as something that engages your imagination. It is not merely a matter of competence and knowing how things are done, although that may be something that you do need to know, but that's not all. It takes you further. And so, as I say, that the construction exercises are sub-exercises. They may or may not be related to the design studio. And I think this could be one of the patterns that I use in making, again, that connection between construction and designing. Next. Yeah, well, this is a tough one, and one really has to work on it. How do you cover nearly all the points that we've been mentioning, but again and again and again in rising levels of complexity as you go through the years? You can shift emphasis, you can choose parts of it, but it should be like, oh, we've done something, we've done timber, now we're not going to look at it again. No, 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 no. Renewable resource is coming back again and again to you. And now you are now doing actually a stadium, renewable resource. In the first year, you did a pencil box, but now you're doing a stadium, okay? Rising levels of complexity. So that's something that really needs to be thought through. Next. Yeah, well, this is the summary. You have explicit learning and tacit learning. You have to address both of them. The explicit learning is what we call lectures or discussions, and research also, independent or in groups. And tacit learning is when you must do something with your hands. Even if you're copying, you're copying intelligently and copying bodily, in a sense. Reenactment is important. And that's about it. I think the rest is self-evident. So that's about pedagogy. Thank you.
So some sort of comments or observations. I'm also partly acting as a thread bearer from the earlier sessions we've had of the kind of debates and nearly everyone mentioned craftsmanship, master craftsman. In fact, even Manish Gulati was talking about master craftsman. And when I asked him what he meant by it, whether he meant an ustad or, and he very interestingly said that, he's somebody which is a figment of our imagination, of somebody who kind of does something well for the sake of doing well. And that's really interesting because, I also remember, weavers of Banaras, when asked, how you're able to weave such beautiful textiles in your most appalling conditions that you live. I mean, how are you able to create such beauty? And, they said it's not about weaving, it's the journey of the soul.
Yeah, so true.
So true. And of course, that's what Kabir as well, said. And so we belong to this culture of, practice and learning as a much larger exercise of a journey of the soul that is not just beyond our physical selves, but, is a continuum. And that against parameters and instruments that calibrate or judge doing well in terms of numbers, in terms of exams, in terms of marks, in terms of, all the system that we've created that is absolutely soul crushing, I feel, for the students as well. I mean, how do you kind of strike a balance between that journey of the soul and this, passing the exam and getting higher marks?
Yeah, I think there's one way. Most students, I wouldn't say it's true for everyone, but most students do like to be recognized as individuals. We all like to be recognized as individuals. And we would like a space which is ours, say from the 3rd year to the 4th and the 5th years, where there is, say 1 day, equivalent to 1 day in a week, where we are pursuing a project of our own under an ustad, if you like, or some other guidance, right? And you kind of develop yourself from within. None of these things, as I say, happen by instruction. They happen through the accumulation of experience and ingestion. Ingestion, by definition, is a slow process. It takes its time. हमें मालूम है डिजाइन वालों की क्या हालत होती है। हमने तो बोला था कि ये 6th week में आपको ये जमा करना है। अरे कहाँ से जमा होगा, वहां तक पहुंचे ही नहीं। लेकिन 9th week में suddenly things click, कुछ ना कुछ हो जाता है। So it takes its own time, and I think it's such a precious thing for a person to feel that they have the potential of an inner motive which can be expressed, which is respected, which is supported, which is encouraged. And I think that's the way to answer that particular question. It should be part of our curriculum. And I know there are places, there are schools of architecture where they have this. You have your personal project, which lasts 3 years. And actually, it's very funny. In SEPT, at the Ahmedabad school, in the old days, they used to do this thesis, right? You can do a design thesis or you can do a research thesis. So there will be people who will do a research thesis, and they'll have a guide. And they'll take 1 year, they'll take 2 years, they'll take 3 years, and it's still not done, and it'll go on forever. And of course, it's getting a little out of hand. But in many cases, my gosh, what transformation occurred for that student. Amazing. So, of course, this happens when you're at the mature end of your course. But I feel that even if you were to take the 3rd, 4th, and 5th years and carve out this space, I think by the 3rd year, I know whether I'm going to be an architect or I'm going to chuck it. I know. अभी 3rd year में degree मिल जाए तो मैं जाके कुछ और कर लूँ, if I had the choice. Or I know that I want to carry on, I want to do something in design or buildings or whatever. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th year, if I was given 1 day, equivalent to 1 day a week, which includes my holidays, as something which is really a project of my own, and then of course some people can choose something which is more practical, craft or skill or whatever, and others may choose something else. I think we'll not be completely dogmatic about it, but I think that's what is required, and it is extremely valuable.
There was also frequent mention of the fact that actually what we do in in the 5 years of architectural degree program, we devote 85% to design and only 15% to other things like construction and technology, and in so-called real life it is reversed, that you hardly get time to design. And whereas all the time you kind of either managing the project or busy constructing it. Do you think that should be addressed? And the related question is, the two very important absent players in the architectural practice that do not feature at all in the curriculum is the client and the construction workers. We've got, throughout the 5 years, we've got this very nice silent client who has endless amount of money and will not object to anything you do. And with that idea, when you step out in the world, every client looks, not good enough because they're interfering with your design. So how do you kind of address these, these gaps in the pedagogy?
Yeah, well, the reality of it is that it is the design studio is a surrogate. It stands in place of the real world. It is intended to stand in place of the real world, right? So you have so-called sometimes a little speculative design problems, sometimes very grounded in real design problems, but it is supposed to stand for the real world. And we did this, I tried this out last year at Kamla Rahija, and I think with moderate kind of success. There was a fourth-year thing, and there's a place called Malbani, which is very crowded, very bad situation, and the sea levels are rising, and it's going to be disastrous in 10, 15 years' time. So the idea was to go there and find out what's to be done. Okay. So what the students had to do was to watch Gully Boy, right? And then go to the locality, get introduced through some NGO friends, talk to everyone, make some friends, and identify particularly people of your own age group. So the studio was called Jeene Bhi Do Yaron, Kyunki Kal Hamara Hai. Okay? So this idea of empathetically becoming the client and a technique for doing so actually worked wonders. So you never use the third person to explain, to describe anybody else. They are doing this, they are like this, they come in the morning, they go in the evening, etc. They have this. You use the first person. Always use the first person. Then in groups, you had to write a rap song, all right, which is evocative, which is aspirational. And they did the rap song. After that, they had a role play in which there was the authorities, there was the clients, there was the builder, and there was this group who were representing the community as professionals. हम इनके लिए काम कर रहे हैं, हम आपसे बात करने आए, kind of thing. And everybody played their role. So it was like, it's like a role play kind of an exercise. You couldn't do the real thing, but you could do something like it. But I tell you, the abstract notions of design simply vanished. It became so real. All right. And the solutions were down to earth and yet sensitive. Right. And so I think it is the process through which, unfortunately, we are still very much full of awe and adulation of Zaha Hadid and the likes. God bless her, she's no longer with us. But, and what's the name of that book that everybody reads, that book about great architect, etc., whatever his name is. So we're still somehow fanning that personality. तुम तो ये हो, अरे भाई कुछ नहीं, मैं तो, I'm a servant. I'm here to render service with my skill, with my knowledge, and I'm writing poetry for you. That's what I'm doing. Okay? Now, if you can inculcate that attitude through the way you construct the design process or the thinking about design, I think so much the better. That's the way to go back to the ground.
Aruna has a question. Do you want to ask that, Aruna?
Not a question. It's just that, like you just mentioned, what Manish and Anuj were talking about yesterday, referring to the master craftsman, but working with that whole, this fascination of doing that through the digital thing. So the students today, in a way, are experiencing only the digital world. So somewhere when we are having this, when we ask as faculty, we are asking this question, how do we do this? Is it somewhere we are, I mean, that's the only thing that they are experiencing. So it is bound to be that if that is what they are experiencing, and then that's where they are going to express, and that's where they are exploring in terms of, design happens through SketchUp, which is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So there is something that we need to bring in, and I don't know how to bridge the gap actually. How do you, like, we are in Gurgaon. I want to specify and contextualize. I mean, talk about what we are in. We are here at Gurgaon, and the place that we are at, and the and the students are from the metropolitan, essentially. So there is this. It's, we are supposed to do it, and we've come from that, but sometimes it's just practically impossible.
Yeah. No easy solution. I mean, this is a broader question, not about materials in construction by any means. It's a broader question about being designers of the built environment. And so designers of the built environment have to certainly learn early on develop their sensibilities, their perceptual sensibilities, their feelings, their appreciation of object, space, scale, size, location, that part. And the second part of it is what I call nesting and inhabitation. You can look at your own space where you are, your own family, all the places that you go to, and you begin to then become acutely aware of the relationship between your body, your activities, and that which supports your body and your activities. You become acutely aware of it. And there have to be exercises that develop these capabilities within the designer. It is only when these capabilities or these sensibilities are aroused, it's a known thing. हम गाना सीखने निकले तो बेसुरी सरगम गाते थे, सरगम तो बेसुरी थी। तो फिर मास्टर जी ने बोला सुन 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 सारे ऐसे कर करके जब 2-3 हफ्ते हुए तब सुर सुनाई देना शुरू हुआ, पहले सुर ही नहीं सुनाई दे रहा था। So the experiential part you have to bring to the threshold, and you have to construct exercises where this actually happens, and it can happen in any circumstance. And it's a very good thing. I found this is very useful. In order for this to be aroused, you need to move to an unfamiliar space. Socially, culturally, physically unfamiliar. Something that you're familiar to, you're half blind to. Something that you're totally unfamiliar with, eyes open up, your senses open up, and you begin to see. So you have to find those exercises. That'll work.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks.
And the value of riyaz, of course, plays a very important role in the iterative process. Is a bit like that. It is.
Exactly.
It reminds me of what Mohanji was saying yesterday. That one master craftsman whose interview we saw in one of the sessions yesterday. He was saying कि एक दिन में तो मैं सिखा नहीं सकता, एक हफ्ते में भी सिखा नहीं सकता, 1-2 साल लग जाएंगे to really get into this thing, and उसके अलावा ये हो नहीं सकता. So that the same riyaz it's actually a part of our legacy as well. It's not just in performing arts in some sense. This is also performing art in that sense.
तभी तो मैं कहता हूँ कि तुम सिर्फ डिजाइन छोड़ दो, तुम बनाना शुरू करो. Take the act of construction yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Himanshu has a question, and maybe then we wrap up. unless somebody else has.
I
Himanshu?
also
Yeah,
wrap
it's
up with asking everybody to turn on their cameras. This is our last. We haven't done that, and we'll take a group shot while we are at it.
what I wrote in the chat box wasn't a question per se, but kind of trying to find answer to what Aruna asked in the session, and I believe that whatever Professor Lal mentioned through his presentation, I think if we look into it, if we resort to that, only then as a faculty, we would be having that kind of balance between technology and what we've been learning past so many years. Because if that balance is achieved and that idea that architecture relies on software, architecture relies on technology, although in several of my discussions I've quoted and I have said that the world is moving forward and not backward, but then in that forwardness we are actually relying on the technologies that have been there, developed and existing. So if that balance is achieved and we as faculty members teach our students that you don't have to rely per se on software to get that kind of architectural knowledge, I think we have hit the nail. We have really hammered it, and then the competencies that a student should get will be achieved, and the institution profess on the buildability. And as you're rightly mentioning it and pointing it out, that design banana chhod do, build karna shuru karo, will be able to get through. So that's what I quoted in my message.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Professor Lal, for a wonderful, enriching, and actually very thought-provoking session. And I think it will surely generate 1,000 conversations around what we've discussed. And we hope to get back to you again and get you over again to continue some of the threads which are really, really important and very inspiring for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, so stay with us. So I'm going to hand over to Amrita for closing the session.
While you're taking a picture, group picture le rahe ho kya?
Yes, sir. Group shot. I'm waiting for everyone to come on. And I have very few contenders over here who are switching on their cameras. There, Gaurav is on.
Gaurav,
आपकी
हो गए यार? बाल सफेद. मैं तो कह रहा हूँ बाल सफेद हो गए.
नहीं सर, वो साइड पे जाने से हो जाते हैं, धूप में सफेद करें सर.
अच्छा.
Mark is on.
Professor Anjana Mittal is here as well.
Oh my gosh. My goodness. Yeah.
This is a memory shot. I got a good one, I think now.
Amrita,
okay, yeah.
Amrita, you'll have to keep changing.
Another one.
You'll have to keep changing the screen layout so that other participants can also come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vibhuti, I remember.
I have a grid extension. Everybody comes in if cameras are on in one go. I don't know.
Okay.
We got some decent memory shots. So some people have not got their cameras on. I think that was good. That was good. We got what we got.
Okay.
So thank you so much for this lovely session. It was really something that helped us close our whole program and with great insights. And we've been talking about these things. We've been saying let's integrate. We've been saying let's talk about these things as one and the other. And I think you did tag our tagline, which is to be an architect is to build. And none of these things can be seen in isolation, and we have to. And I like particularly your point about leaving those regulations aside that various authorities give us, but actually looking at it from a very I mean, we have to be the people who decide or delve on what our profession needs to be and what our discipline needs to be. So it has to come from us, and we need to integrate things in a deeper and a more I don't know, relevant manner, which is not just about tomorrow, post-COVID, which is about everything that we do, which is about all our interconnections. So I think a great ending, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful experience and through that journey. And we will ask you to come back and share
Okay.
with us eventually, sir. Thank you so much.
Take care and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky, for holding it for us. I think if our participants would like to stay on and take a group shot with the team, the SSA FacTOR team, and Vibhuti and Himanshu, it would be a great thing as well for us as our memory of our program.
We've had a very, very intense, and we didn't even realize what we had planned. Honestly speaking, we were so in the midst of planning, organizing, we really didn't know what we were doing. So it's been an amazing journey. Amazing.
Absolutely.
And I think, we should also thank our participants to be there all the 6 days, and through the participants list, I was monitoring every day who are there, because oftentimes they lose interest and then they walk out, whether they have paid or they have not paid. But it was so interesting to see that all the members attended all the 6 days, and they were glued on. They were there to see what's really going to take place next day. It was really interesting.
No scope of walking out. No
scope of walking out at all.
No, I think for us also, I don't know. I've learned so much through these. I mean, even after having organized them, it was more about learning for me as well, and really having so many varied viewpoints and the kind of questions that all of you guys asked, apt, bang on.
Yes.
Students also really contributed, and I think.
And although we could not discuss like interacted one-on-one per se, and the chat box continuously got flooded with the ideas, thoughts. That was really interesting to see that. And even like I've been teaching BC for almost 5-6 years now. On and off I have taken break from the course, but otherwise in that process of teaching and through this FacTOR program, I've understood quite a lot of things and taken insight from our own speakers, and perhaps bring in that kind of change that is needed for this particular course, which is so daunting, oftentimes daunting, not just for students, even for faculty members. And when you ask a faculty member that you have to teach BC, and then suddenly they are taken aback, no, I don't want to, because pata nahi kya hoga, that kind of scenario. So it was really good to see that. It was really good to see that. That lot of insight and that detail that is required to streamline this course across the country, right? And so it's very interesting for me also to observe this fact that when I questioned Hossein in the morning, that what is the reaction of these statutory bodies on the course curriculum development that you are taking place, and he on one side said that we take insight from that document and then we prepare our programs and courses. Whereas what Professor Lal mentioned was completely opposite, like forget COA. Just check them and see what you can build on. Whereas Hossein is on the other hand, like following a great structure that has been there existing for so many years, so many centuries rather. So it was both the sessions were poles apart, but eventually come down to that fact of learning by doing hands-on, and that's where you're going to attack BC directly rather than BC attacking the faculty as well as the student.
I think we are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We are super overwhelmed, but very nicely, and lots of food for thought. I think we all need to process and reprocess. Sometimes, when we actually go into our teaching spaces, we realize that we have actually not picked up so many things that were discussed, and there are methods and means to do that. So I urge everyone to actually reach out again if that's the position that you find yourselves in, which we all do, and maybe we can have a rehash or a rediscussion on those topics, and meet around it again, and remind ourselves the ways of implicating them into our teaching, in a more concrete way. Though lots of ideas. So also. I don't want to end with this note, but I'll say it before the end. Submit your assignments. then email you, or we'll do something about certificates.
Yeah.
If you are agreeable to coming back into another session, we will happily give ourselves some more shabashi and some certificates, or we will email it to you as it happens. But yeah, we have all the opportunities on this forum. We don't have to.
And I think so. We can also make this can be a very good connecting space. We all can connect. We've spent these past 5-6 days together. So please, we could start, and you could send in your thoughts, and we can start a conversation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think also we could. This is the 3rd year of SSA FacTOR. I think we could very legitimately host alumni get-together event. It's been, there have been people who have been with our, journey from the beginning. So it's quite a big collective of people who join us in these very enriching journey and give their time and energy generously, which is.
I think it's a very good idea that we bring all our speakers all across in one session, alumni, everybody, and do one more session of just Himanshu can play some music and.
Absolutely, I would love to do that.
See, this is the energy which is so special. We barely finished this session, and we are imagining the next one. You see, I love it. And Amrita was saying this is so exhausting. We're all exhausted. In the morning we were discussing, my God, okay, last 100 meters we have to get through this. Come on, guys. We have to. This is the last day, and here we are, finished.
And then
we are thinking, up next, kya kare?
And then you told me you need and you are going to draw your energy from us. So I said, okay. I injected myself with some energy, and I came.
Absolutely, give me that. Yeah, absolutely. I have 3 more webinars to go to, so I need all the energy.
I already have the invitation prepared. The template is ready. I just need to change the text, and I can send it out.
Itna aasan nahi hai to call us all. You have to spend some time. Everything is already.
The template is ready. I just need to edit. Wo main kar lunga, don't worry.
So, by some of you, I request some of our participants.
Yeah,
please talk.
Yes,
now
please,
there's
please.
just us. There's nobody else.
Everybody,
so, yeah.
Who are hanging on, please put on.
And also, everybody, anybody else, everybody. It's not just been a very tight participant. It's been most of the events have been open for everybody. So everybody is a participant. So please,
and
we would like to hear you.
Yeah, please do.
I would like to thank SSAA, Dr. Vibhuti and Amrita, Aruna, everybody. It's been an enriching session, and I've enjoyed the 5 days. And from diverse topics, from traditional to computational to so many lovely speakers, I really salute you for getting all of us together on this platform. And it has been a lovely, lovely 5 days. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody would like to say something? Alpi, finally, say something.
So Alpi is most vocal or most, on the chat comments, lots of good ideas.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
It just excited me. I was very happy. and really, I was waiting, in these last 4 months, 5 months, this kind of interactive session where you're getting a lot of things from one side, and you have a lot of say, in these interactions. So I enjoyed it very much, and I'm very thankful that Amrita reached out on the last moment that there is this workshop happening.
I was like, oh, I'll be ready.
So I am really full of gratitude, and I'm so happy to see all of you there, the whole SSA group. So yeah, I mean, just feels really proud to be back again in a different mode with you.
Thank you so much for being here and to make it actually very useful for all of us. I think the more we participated, the more valuable it became. I think that was very important in raising the level of, it just supported each other and of the whole program. So thank you so much, Alpi, for your constant, appreciation in some ways, but also tagging the right things. That was really nice in your comments.
Amandeep, would you like to say something?
Yes, let her come in.
Yeah, Amandeep.
Hi, ma'am. Hello.
Hello.
Ma'am, thank you so much for this session. I really appreciate and learn a lot with these all six days. So I just waiting for a next session, next any FDP program and any kind of webinar. Really interesting, ma'am.
That's very encouraging.
Thank you, Amrita ma'am and Aruna ma'am. Thank you so much.
So Amandeep, you're on our mailing list, and you will keep. You're on our mailing list now. You will keep getting these inputs from us. I mean, we'll keep reminding you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. And Aruna ma'am, you said yesterday you are like you feel like a radio. No, you are not a radio. You are always say everything like this with a smiling face. We feel we really enjoy.
Thanks a lot. Means a lot to me because this medium has its own. There's so many great things about it. I say first great thing, but then there's a little challenge also. So yeah, thanks.
No, ma'am. Literally, we learn a lot from this.
You were very challenged when you were presenting for the creative group because there was a time lag. You kept getting upset with your.
Actually, how I'll be present there all the time. I'll manage a lot because I have a 9 daughter. So it's really problem. So I just facing a lots of problem. Like I'm so happy, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Amandeep. Thank you.
We have Dr. Anchuri, we have Kuntal Shah, and
I think Kundan has switched on his video also. So Kundan, you want to go first, and then we'll go.
Because I think they post some of the very valid questions and sessions.
Sorry, I didn't see the chat.
Yeah, no issues. But I think Dr. Anchuri, Kuntal, and Venkatesaran, if you would like to share something.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, please do.
I feel like I have earned another degree. Like, really, things are very, very, I don't have words. In one word, I can say like architecture, design, studio, and building construction should not be seen as a different subject. They all are the same subject. I think there is a lot to take away. And special thanks to entire SSA team, for giving such a valuable time and effort. It's not so easy, but definitely it's a memorable experience. And I will definitely stay connected. Please feel free to come to Ahmedabad, and we also go to Hunarsala for case study. Every batch we always go for case study to Hunarsala. Not a single batch is missed to go to Hunarsala.
Mr. Shah, જ્યારે અમદાવાદ આવીએ ત્યારે definitely મળીશ તમને.
ચોક્કસ sir, ચોક્કસ મળીશું આપણે. Thank you.
He had to do it.
He can talk Marathi also. He'll talk Gujarati as well.
I am also saying all of those. Yeah, so
Yeah, Dr. Anchuri. Yes. Dr. SP Anchuri, we'd like to hear you. Acha.
I don't
Maybe
know.
some network issue. Yeah.
I think we have Venkatesan as well. Mr. Venkatesan, are you there? Mr. Raguswamy?
maybe even Ashish Agarwal and some students. Pritam, you are not saying anything. Rima's out there.
Praveen Kumar?
We like you to talk, please.
अब तो बात करनी पड़ेगी.
Sindhuri, we'll call. We know somebody sure. Sindhuri, don't go away.
Sindhuri.
Has she gone?
I think
she might have had something, so she must have stepped.
Rima?
Preeta?
Rima has just typed that she is
okay.
Joined us from all the way from let me read out her message from Algeria. She's a PhD student, and she actually reached out to me saying that I really want to see what's going on out there in the world, and she's been having time issues joining at 5 o'clock in the morning. Here, Rima, please do come in.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to thank you so much for this rich event for me as a PhD student. I'm from Algeria, and it was an interesting experience for me as I'm new in teaching, and I would like to improve everything in it. And so, yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Rima. You're welcome. I'm sure you've had some issues of language for which we really didn't have a choice. I think we go into our language of default very easily, and we try. But any questions you have, please do reach out as far as that is concerned. I know you've been messaging and asking questions as you go along, which has been really nice. So thank you, Rima.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Anchuri has joined.
Yeah.
Welcome, Dr. SP Anchuri.
Namaste. Actually, I am from Hyderabad and I'm trying to join through my mobile. So basically, I'm a structural engineer and teaching architecture to architectural students. So I have my double post-graduation in architecture and structures too. So basically, I'm a visiting professor. Here also, I'm a visiting, like a juror. I was observing you, and S square, A square, double S, double A, mathematical language, S square and A square. I think team is good. The fact is, because as a visiting professor or lecturer, I go once in a week, and you people are, within the campus. So what we do is we learn outside and we come home and prepared and come to class for 1 hour or 1.5 hours. So we see the sea change outside the college or campus. So the requirement and other things. And being a part of architectural family and representing architects fraternity, and we work closely associated with Mr. Vijay Garg and so many other practitioners. Ma'am, the curriculum and the practice is entirely connected. But the thing is how to deal with the student's mind, because when we started our practice at 25, my client was about 50, and now we are 50 and our client is about 25, 30 because of this IT revolution and a lot of change in the industry. So what I feel is I love chalk and talk, still today, but we are through webinars going on now. But as for me, architecture is not just exciting and other things. I think we need to give shelter for the humanity, and this is the call which our Prime Minister has called for. That is self-reliance. I think you are in metro, I am in metro, but other than metro, once you go out, I think the real architect's role starts. we need to have a good integration, and we need to work together, which will create a lot of employment, lot of scope. We need to give a space for the humanity. I think overall efforts, what we did since 5 days, it's good. We need to have integration, and hats off to SSAA, and especially Dean and Arunaji and others. Himanshu, he was just playing a role because I was observing from the external side and I was putting some questions. I got good answers, and let us work ahead and together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anchari.
I think we have
Praveen has just commented. Praveen Kumar has just commented on the chat.
Yeah, Sindhuri, we want you to speak and we want to hear you. You are on mute.
Thank you, Aruna. I've been listening for the last 6 days. This time I just didn't want to, because this is something I am so alien to, and it's like just cracking out of a nutshell, for myself, to come out with some kind of knowledge, about the whole subject of building construction. SSA again is very successful to put all the 3 baskets together in just one workshop. The thinking, applying, and doing. I think, yeah, I mean, kudos to all of you. I mean, it's so nice to be on the other side and take the advantage of all the hard work that went behind it. I mean, I can imagine what all could have gone through. And I'm missing Amrita saying, "Chalo kal se report banana hai, abhi khatam nahi hua." and ma'am, we request you to give us this weekend for doing our submission.
You are a typical student. You have a message, miss you, Sindhuri, from Parshati on the group.
I will put team. I was just thinking yesterday broadly.
Are you saying I should shift the making of the report from Monday onwards? And because you will give me the input over the weekend.
Yes, something like that.
We'll say thank you, Sindhuri.
We have Raghu Swami who hasn't spoken, and Ruchika Gupta also who hasn't spoken. If you would like to share something.
And Preeta also, we are waiting.
Preeta, yes, Preeta. Tanya.
Preeta's
having network issue. Oh, okay.
Tanya,
Mr.
Raghuswamy.
Like
Tanya, Raghuswamy. Meenal is also here.
Tanya is here.
Tanya, go
ahead.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Everyone. I think it was too much to handle. But jokes apart, I think no matter which construction semester we step into, class now will have some input for, I think, a wide variety of materials and construction techniques. So I think it'll be easier, and I think I'll be more comfortable stepping into any class of construction now. So thank you so much for organizing this, workshop wherein we could, listen practices and techniques and materials and a lot of things that have a huge range of things that we went over. And thanks, Srijani, for following up on everything every now and then. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Srijani. So Tanya, I just want to say that you are due on another FacTOR, which is going to happen in the end of July. So don't think this is too much. There's more coming your way.
No, I'm all up for it. I'm all up for it. Any day. Okay.
Yeah.
We have Meenal and Neha Sardana and Meenal Palwe.
Meenal has been around through the day.
Yes. If you are here, then
Amrita, we should also introduce Parshati to the team.
Parshati,
please, Parshati, switch on. I just see you are there. Switch on your video and your Parshati?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
Switch on your video, please.
Nobody knows Parshati's role in the background. She is responsible for getting us out there in every way, graphically, conceptually, putting all the ideas together. All our posts are her babies. And
I want to say one thing, that everybody's only seen the finished products. They haven't seen the first drafts, which were mostly quite horrible, and they also haven't seen how until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock at midnight, everybody has been conversing on the FacTOR production team, and how everybody's pitched in with their comments and JPEGs and supplying like so much information and always advising to make it better. So it's really like it's not just me, it's all of us.
No, you are the look of it. You are the face of it. Come on, you make it.
No, absolutely not. It's
So
all
we
of us.
wanted.
And even like the last poster yesterday, I still don't, I don't get it कि वो कैसे हर बार वो सही कैसे होता है to get the
there are average 16 revisions. I've noticed average there are like somewhere between 12 to 16 revisions. So इतनी बार करेंगे.
We had a moment too when Parshati says, "Ma'am, और नहीं हो रहा है," and I said, "चलो मुझे दे दो." And she said,
we have a hashtag also. We have a hashtag called changes तो होंगे.
So yeah,
that's the FacTOR team. Srijani, so Amrita, led by Amrita, and of course our dean. I mean, I should say it in order. So I will say Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev, our associate dean Himanshu Sangani. Then I say Amrita, Professor Amrita Madan. And I'll say, okay, me, Aruna Bharadwaj, jockey, radio jockey. So, yeah, and
sorry, Aruna, you are not a radio jockey. You are the one who's been getting in touch with every speaker, talking to each one of them, and helping in that. I mean, not just helping, actually, instrumental in curating everything. So don't just say jockey. You are it's your moment. Take it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of work that went in. Srijani, who just put everything in place. She's
the super organizer. We couldn't do anything.
Super organizer. Yeah, absolutely.
Makes it all happen.
And Himanshu has a special role also. He's part of the team because he is there for our training. So we've been getting training.
How to live stream, how to connect, how to make these technical issues, kind of become irrelevant and make them, something that we now know. We do it, with eyes closed, and hours and hours with us trying to get all of this in place. So great, Himanshu. Thank you so much for all of that support.
It's a part of all our efforts and teams. So no thank yous, no nothing. I enjoyed. I completely enjoyed the whole process of like you said, making this whole technology irrelevant and seamlessly just ingrained in our overall system. And I can now say that Srijani has become a pro in getting 5 things run at the same time. And she just today morning, and I got the confirmation from Nidhi also that the second webinar, which is taking place, the participatory approach of urban design, that live streaming is also being set up by Srijani. It's all done, all set. So she has become pro now and I can easily say she was a patient student when I was training her how to go about with that.
रात के 1 बजे सर ये नहीं होता है. To get that, I think it was continuous 4-5 days of trial and error to get that right.
Yeah.
All smooth now.
And finally, I want to just say one final thing. Then Amrita, it's over to you. And the force is our own Vibhuti. Vibhuti over here always, I mean, pushing us to be a little better, a little more, and suggesting many, and really seeing it from and giving all the inputs at that time. Yeah, so said it out there, Vibhuti, the force.
I love it. Absolutely. I mean, this is actually a tribute to, how well we work as a team, and what, Hossein was talking about. We are living that process, that, everybody on the same page, driven, passionate, wants to make a change. This is what we can do, and this is just the beginning. And I think the entire SSA is responsible for the success of SSA FacTOR, because we all, whether we are in the team or in our studio or in our other, jobs that we do, we all have contributed to this. You know, indirectly, directly, we're all. An achievement of SSA, and I'm really, really happy the way it went. It was super. If we've raised the bar, we will keep raising the bar. I will not stop from raising the bar, and you guys know it. So
your line is what we are all carrying. So next, you're always yeah. So what's next? We are at it. But I would like. I'm picking a bone here with Aruna. She tells me I am the one who makes life difficult, and she tells it in another forum. And I said, okay, in the next public forum, I'm going to pick this bone with her. I mean, makes life difficult. Aruna?
Yeah. Amrita makes life difficult because we think, because of course we both are co-researchers together. So we have this
I
other.
really agree with you. I am with you in this.
And yes, you have been also. So yeah, and when we've been working,
somebody has to be the force. Somebody has to be the difficulty. Somebody also. We all have contributed in all sorts of kinetic energy, potential energy, dynamic. What are the kinds of energies we have? We all have bundles of energies, and we all have contributed. And it takes all sorts of energies for things to flower the way they have. I mean, could you have imagined when we talked about this a month ago, that we want to take up the most difficult subject and discuss it, and we thought, how on earth are we going to do building construction online teaching? I mean, so here we are. I mean, there are so many layers to it, and I've also attended webinars which talk about how to teach building construction efficiently online, but they don't even touch the surface of the complexity that we are talking about. The layers that it has, the potential that it has waiting to be unleashed. So absolutely, I think this is great. So Amrita, please continue to be difficult. We are banking on that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And I'm not going to stop being pushy and forcing people to do stuff. So and likewise, everybody else will have their weight as well. And I don't know, you really.
This whole experience of working with this team has been incredible. They've been the most beautiful people, and really brought everything together. And I must thank each one of you to have done that and to have really pushed it and made it all very, very, very relevant for us. I think thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, and thank you, participants, everybody. Okay, I like that. Kuntal is showing double thumbs.
And I'm saying that next time, if anyone is making anybody's life difficult, you just have to say the force is with me.
Fair enough.
But you have to ask Himanshu twice. One time it's going to be really, really difficult and impossible.
Okay, and we will.
Amrita knows how to do it, and I'm second there. Yeah, so it's okay. We're all unique personalities, you see. So it's like a family, we have our eccentricities, we have our, forces. That's the fun. That's the fun of knowing somebody for, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and which, and you live together, tension, and and you get to know each other so deeply that how the person is going to behave, and our hearts are all together. That's what is so great. Our hearts are together.
And the second thing is that the beauty of working together is that you go with plan A, and you don't just go with plan A. There is always a plan B ready. That if this gets rejected, we are going to just present this one. So
sometimes we also just end up combining all our plans, A, B, C,
oh
D.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, it's always the next thing. Just combine it all together.
Yep.
That's what. Yes, Vibhuti.
I need to go, so I'm going to just say bye and lovely, and see you again. The next topic is already brewing in our heads, so
Yes.
we'll start again.
All right.
Bye.
So,
thank you
so much.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vibhuti.
Thank you everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.